You tell me when to start, Usman.
Sure, yeah, let's give maybe a minute.
Okay.
Awesome, I think we can get started.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Chris Shute, as I'm co-lead of the N3C, as many of you know, and I'm guest moderator this week, is standing in because this is a colleague of mine, Hongfang Liu, with whom I've worked many, many years. He's going to speak on the findings, recommendation, and best practices for multi-site EHR-based clinical research empowered by natural language processing. She'll be joined by Emily Pfaff, as well as colleagues from Mayo, who I will allow Hongfang to introduce.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, my name is Hongfang Liu, and many of you know I'm currently at the Mayo Clinic and also leading the N3C NLP effort. Join with me are two of my colleagues. One is Sunyang Fu, who is currently a senior data science analysis at the Mayo Clinic. He actually did a PhD study related to how to deploy clinical NLP across multi-sites to support the clinical and translational research. So he will talk in more detail about it. And the other one is Andrew Wen, who also a senior data science analysis at the Mayo. He actually is the lead architect and implementer of the minimal viable product of the N3C NLP infrastructure for the National COVID Cohort Collaborative. So probably Sunyang, get back to you and you can advance.
Sounds good. Let me share my screen. Thank you for the introduction, and hi everyone. It is truly a great honor for me to co-present with Hongfang, Andrew, and Emily, and then share some of the findings related to multi-site EHR-based clinical research empowered by NLP. So the overview for today's talk, including presenting some of the lesson learned and best practices related to the implementation discovery through multi-site NLP studies. And then Hongfang is going to lead the discussion and talk about the NLP approach, as well as talk about N3C NLP PASC Release and then facilitate some discussion. The electronic health record systems, or EHR, are now become prevalent due to patient information has become available, incentivized by the High-Tech Act of 2008, which has made patient information become enriched and resulting in establishment of number of research networks and consortium to enable multi-site research collaboration. So as an illustration of EHR-based clinical research, studies are usually formulated by identifying key clinical or epidemiological issues. So in this example, we present three different disease study areas, including post-surgical deep infection, followed by total joint arthroplasty, incidental findings from the radiological screening of silent brain infarct SBI, as well as a delirium-associated aging study. And three different research questions are established to understand the risk, outcome, and association for the given area. And however, challenges start to occur when operationalizing EHR data and start to use the data. This includes potential heterogeneity of the EHR environment that caused various data documentation issues. So as much of detailed information is embedded within patient's narrative text, such as clinical notes, NLP, which is a subdomain of artificial intelligence, has been leveraged to process the unstructured information and facilitate the summarization, extraction, and understanding of clinical documents. Particularly, clinical information extraction is a subdomain of NLP that's widely used methods to help extract the predefined clinical or linguistic concepts from patient narrative reports. So if we're looking back to the previous 3 examples, let's walk through a high-level overview of how exactly NLP can be applied to facilitate clinical research. So we'll first define the objective of NLP, which are to ascertain patient status of PGI, SBI, and delirium. So standard definitions are established through either adopting existing standards, such as Musculoskeletal Infectious Society criteria, or well-validated diagnostic tools, such as confusion assessment methods. In addition, the standard definition can also be established by the domain expert through a rigorous process. So corresponding NLP algorithms are then created based on the standard definition and then further evaluated and applied to relevant data sources. So this includes microbiology pathology reports, radiology, and clinical notes. And then the final results will then be organized in a way to help answer specific clinical questions. So in the past decade, there has been increasing number of NLP systems or frameworks developed. So in this listed publications are NLP systems or framework. And NLP algorithms or applications that uses one or more frameworks has been reported range from disease study areas, clinical workflow optimization, drug studies, or social determinant of health. The majority of existing clinical NLP studies are done within a single site institutional environment, which usually comprised of 3 important processes. So this includes the development of cohort, and then use the cohort to establish gold standard corpus to help further develop and evaluate NLP systems. So this process is oftentimes being implemented or optimized based on the institutional specific characteristics, and thus could remain in a disconnected silo situation. So single site clinical research may suffer from limited external validity, and finding therefore needs to be validated externally. So this emphasizes the importance of multi-site research. And in addition, multi-site studies also plays a vital role in minority recruitment, research inclusiveness, diversity, etc. And another motivation is the present pandemic situation demands the need for the diverse and comprehensive data aggregated across multiple institutions. So as an illustrative use case of multi-site clinical research study empowered by NLP, I've been fortunately involved with the NLP development and the deployment of this project led by Dr. Marty Kremers and Dr. Song at Mayo Clinic. Mayo Clinic Total Joint Registry is one of the most comprehensive and historical registry in the nation. The idea is to leverage this knowledge to develop a set of NLP algorithms at Mayo, and then deployed these algorithms to 3 sub-award sites for external validation and refinement until it reached to a satisfactory performance, and then further applied to all other hospitals across the nation for the purpose of establishing a nationwide arthroplasty registry. So after almost 4 years of effort working on these projects, I want to share some lessons learned and challenging gaps relate to the execution and implementation within a multi-institutional environment. So in this presented figures summarize the high-level overview of external validation and refinement process that involves both development and deployment sites. It also includes both the research process, which is in the blue and orange boxes, as well as the administrative processes in the dash. So I'm going to share some challenges from 4 distinct perspectives: people, policy, infrastructure, and data. So starting from the people's perspective, different sub-award sites have different local expertise. And in order to successfully complete this process, it requires at least three types of expertise. So the first type of expertise is the domain knowledge of total joint arthroplasty that links to the direct work with the cohort definition, as well as some involvement over the interpretation of NLP results, and as well as established gold standard definition. The second type of expertise will be the ETL and data infrastructure that links to identify the ability to automatically retrieve data and to provide high throughput NLP solutions. And the third aspect will be the basic NLP and algorithm development and evaluation knowledge. So this links to how to react when there could be technical issues or bugs and additional room for optimization. So this project started, none of the sites have all three expertise available. And it took quite some effort to and communication to establish this expertise, including aggressively reaching out to other departments for help. There's one site even waiting to open job posting to hire additional expertise. So the second aspect will be the institutional specific security policy. So we observed there has been a significant impact to the time and effort related to the exchange of information resources. So this includes to obtain the security clearance for sharing NLP systems to their local environment. And this process can actually range from days to months, depending on their local policy. And it also had significant impact to the ability whether we could share NLP results for potential error analysis and refinement. The third aspect, which is the infrastructure regarding the maturity of the ETL and data infrastructure. So at the beginning of this project, we assume the data retrieval would not be a barrier until we started conversation with each site. And still now we have sites are still struggling with automatic data retrieval and has to use manual abstraction as a temporary alternative solution. So after so many efforts, each site finally had a data available for NLP to run. So I get excited for the fun part until I reconnect to one site and learn their clinical documents were in a scanned and non-searchable PDF format. So then I started to panic. So this linked to the fourth data issue. So eventually we're able to identify freely available OCR solution to convert these PDFs into a raw TXT format for NLP to run. But it's just important to really dive in the process and then react additional challenges and barriers. So this valuable experience triggers us to rethink as a clinical NLP researcher so basically rather than a simple viewing NLP as a magic tool, it's really a much more complex and dynamic artifacts, and it has close connection and interaction with numerous contextual and human factors inside of clinical environment. So we leverage the actor network theory to model the interaction as a heterogeneity network. So this includes both human and non-human actors within the process. So through this representation, we're able to have a systematic view of potential gaps and challenges as we illustrated in the previous slide. So these factors need to be carefully considered, implemented, and as well as reported to ensure the process is transparent and outcome is valid. Another way of viewing clinical NLP development process is to put it into a kind of iterative and dynamic process of information generation and information use. So we conceptualize this process of the secondary use of EHR and propose information quality matrix to quantifying process visibility and outcome variability. So the following slides, I'm going to share some of the pragmatic challenges in several real-world case study implementation, just following this process of data collection, organization, representation, and data use, and as well as dissemination. So the first case study analyzed the data infrastructure between Mayo Clinic and the Olmsted Medical Center. This figure showed that two types of ETL processes during data collection, and if we could focus on the unstructured ETL process, we observed that potential information loss due to the syntactic structure of the document when converting the RTF to a plain text. And similarly, not all the information were extracted during the information transformation process. There's potential metadata loss. So in the right figure, we discovered there's poor accessibility of data within the inter-institutional environment. This is due to the privacy, regulatory, and local data infrastructure. So the important implication is to have a thorough understanding of the site-specific representational and accessibility information quality prior to the study implementation or system deployment. The second study was conducted at a single site. Mayo Clinic recently completed the full EHR system migration. So from previously G-centricity to Epic at around 2018. So this migration offers kind of ideal scenario to examine the differences of text document contributed by two different EHR systems. So if we focus on the corpus statistic comparison between Epic and Centricity, we observe there's a large number of clinical documents, tokens, and sections is greater within Epic compared with Centricity. And then if we look closer to look at the tokens per documents, tokens per patient, and the sections per documents, the actual centricity is significantly greater than Epic, indicating potential higher documentation density within the original centricity nodes. So the comparison of the section distribution indicated a relatively high alignment across two EHRs. But despite that, there are still a few sections unable to be mapped based on the CDA HL7 standard. And this issue will be further exacerbated for multi-institutional environment. So the potential implication include when an NLP system is developed from Epic and is to be applied to, for example, a Centricity or Cerner, we cannot assume the section detection algorithm could work automatically without working with the local team to conduct further evaluation. So moving from the data use, the third study occurred at a multi-site collaboration between Mayo and Tufts Medical Center. So we apply a set of qualitative and quantitative evaluation to examine the institutional variation. This is achieved through comparing the near image reporting, near image interpretation, as well as the intrinsic patient population characteristics. So we find that there's a variant reporting patterns due to the different adoption of documentation templates. There is a strong differences across Mayo and Tufts residents differences contributed by their training and medical knowledge. So we also observe there's a persistent gap in the age-specific prevalence ratio of the SBIs within both CT and MRI scans. And moving from gold standard to NLP system development, using the previous discussed delirium as an example, so NLP algorithms were developed based on the standard diagnostic tool confusion assessment method. So this study ended up with developed two different versions of NLP systems with two different definitions. So this is motivated by working closely with the domain expert teams, as well as some additional assessment on the EHR data quality. We learned that strictly applying the original definition may not be sensitive enough to capture potential highly likely and possible cases. So we therefore modify the criteria to adapt to the real world EHR. So instead of strictly follow the criteria, we'll still be able to maintain and manage two different versions. So it offers additional flexibility for the users and investigators to when they want to apply different criteria of the study. So NLP deployment is a process of porting previously developed and evaluated NLP system to a different EHR environment. However, this process does not stop at system delivery, because having the system doesn't mean it can run successfully, or doesn't mean you can be able to obtain a similar enough result. So this really requires extensive team science collaboration and engagement within a standardized process. So as you are probably aware now, just developing a clinical NLP is relatively complex and not cheap. So it is important to maximize the value of each system being developed. I took this opportunity to work with several end users, including clinicians, clinical researchers, fellows, residents. One feedback I received is to make the system definition transparent and available to the end users. So this not only provide additional level of flexibility, but also helps with the system explainability as well as the validity. The second aspect is through working with the geriatricians who actually participate in the data documentation. Was shared that some recommendation relate to the coding changes patterns of the delirium community. Currently they are shifting from original delirium to encephalopathy documentation. So recommended to slightly modify the NLP definition to adopting their current practice by encoding encephalopathy as a direct ascertainment definition for delirium status. This also showed the power through really just working with the domain team and understand their communities' changes and needs, and identify an optimal solution for it. And so lastly, at the dissemination and reporting stage, we observe there's a lack of reporting standards and as well as a research metadata for NLP empowered clinical research. So this is a comparison between of the current version of STORPY statement identified that any EHR or NLP related activities within the traditional clinical research reporting were missing. So this kind of poses additional opportunity for us to develop standards to help strengthen the dissemination and reporting. So with that, I'm going to shifting to Dr. Liu, who is going to talk about the OH-NLP approach.
Sounds great. Can you go to the next slide? So this is to give you an overall architecture related to OH-NLP approach, and this is actually the research result from over 10 years of research in this domain when we try to bring NLP solutions for secondary use of EHR for clinical translational research. As you can see from Sunyang's presentation, it is not a trivial process, and a different institution have different kind of heterogeneity and capability regarding their text analytics infrastructure in their domain. So we actually have three different perspectives we want to talk, mainly from the informatics angle and also from the ethical AI framework. So from the people perspective, when we talk about informatics, always the people, process, and technology. So from the people perspective, if you want to do this ask people to contributing clinical notes and clinical data, they always have some privacy concerns. So we are adopting a Federated NLP development evaluation framework for community-wide NLP collaboration. This is crucial because data sharing of clinical notes, that's most of the institutions are not comfortable to share clinical notes due to the concern of identifiers. Secondly, is regarding the trustworthiness, and Sunyang actually talk about how do we ensure transparency and incorporate NLP as a part of the team science collaboration rather than a single technical side of the solution. Lastly is the evidence what we are showing is that we have been proving the NLP can bring tremendous value to clinical translational research through our single sites. But if we want to truly do this in a ethical way or fair way, we actually needed to get those tools into an open source environment to allow people to have the transparency and the trust into those NLP results to facilitating the adoption. So summarized into this, the whole framework architecture was built upon the right fair principles. Next slide. So the right fair principle, we view this as the human-centric ethical AI framework. Natural language processing is not new. It has been researched over 40 years. And clinical NLP specifically has been around for 30 years. But why we still face this issue that we have not truly, besides several institutions with resources, we have not achieved community-wide adoption of the NLP techniques for clinical translational research. Even we have the assumption that 80% of the information actually in the clinical notes. And so this is the fair data principle, which is related to for the NLP artifacts and for the NLP algorithm itself. It's very important to ensure findability, accessibility, interpretability, and reusability. This data component related to NLP artifacts, not really related to NLP data itself, but the algorithm itself for processing the clinical documents. The secondly is the right implementation principles. We want the process to be corrected to avoiding any obvious mistakes, and this is ensure the transparent and implementable kind of process, NLP process. And also, we also probably need to take a human-centric approach for explainable and reproducible results. And one of the things we face actually as natural language processing researchers is that, okay, I do have a NLP results, but there's an error, can you fix it? We couldn't fix when we adopt the statistical NLP approach and without leveraging post-processing. Then we got this idea, basically, rather than doing this as separate approach, can we combine statistical NLP and expert-based NLP together, where the statistical NLP helped me to do the sub-language knowledge engineering. So after that engineering, we be able to have explainable and reproducible language part to communicate to the domain experts. Next. So let's go back to the scientific rigor. As Sunyang has already illustrated, the implementation and the evaluation for NLP is not trivial due to the lack of text analysis infrastructure across the community. Secondly, natural language processing as itself, if you truly want to make use of it, you actually need to adopt the team science approach. It's not to say, your institution, the IT specifically can deliver an NLP solution. Actually, you need to be part of the process to develop NLP algorithms to ensure scientific rigor. There are certain implications of clinical research when you use, the lack of the evaluation. Basically, most of the data elements we identified by NLP are either risk factors or outcome in a survey we conducted, review we conducted. This can have a strong implication to the outcome of the study. So this actually caught us a huge attention because as an NLP researcher, it may not matter when we publish clinical research articles, but if the NLP become translated to real-world implementation to support the clinical research, if we don't make sure this is scientific rigor and transparent regarding the NLP methods and evaluation, we can potentially cause harm because the results have implication for individual, for some patients when they have policy implication and implementation implication. Next. So this is the reason we are calling for, we leveraging the statistical corpus-based approach and leveraging 3 levels of intelligence to facilitating a collaborative development, as well as we want to simplify the process of implementing NLP at a different institution by providing a minimum viable product related to the deployment. Next slide. So this is a lot of things we have been tools and available. This is one of the tool for annotation. This is a serverless type of annotation environment for local sites to evaluate and refine their NLP algorithms if the NLP algorithm be deployed. The reason we use serverless is because it's simplified. You don't need to store, get your IT permission for security concern. And this is totally run as the front end annotation tool. Next. And this is go to the minimum viable product. We are hoping the NLP sites be able to for community-wide NLP deployment. So a lot of us, as when you talk to your clinical NLP researchers, most of them work on probably servers, not in the production environment. And 10 years ago, when I get into the field of doing the production enterprise NLP deployment, I actually noticed it's not really simple task. It's actually team science effort, teamwork effort. You first need to work with your local IT team to ensure the data can be extracted from your local clinical data warehouse. And then you be able to run the NLP engines processing and populate it to a data store. And then the data can then be shared. So the right side of the box, means the N3C enclave we want to submit, and the left side is mainly talk about, this behind the firewall, how can you get your local data, for example, from your Epic Clarity table to a OMAP data store for NLP submission. And this actually all packaged as a part of the NLP minimum viable product for the NLP deployment, which is the backbone. And it's driving by Apache Beam and Apache Flink. Go to the next slide. Want to quickly go through things and that framework regarding N3C NLP Release 2.0. In the past 1.5 years, we have been heavily working on, try to see how can we get this minimum viable product and get this process disseminated widely across the community. And we want to use the PASC as a use case. Remember, the whole infrastructure, the toolkits is not COVID PASC specific, it's generic for any kind of disease. But this is just to illustrate from the PASC perspective, how can we do as a community to use the NLP to augment the data. This slide show in the release just come up recently, the past week, is the NLP Release 2.0, and where we incorporate dictionary lookup for constant mentions. And so basically you can do the whole OMAP concept indexing of your local NLP, local clinical notes. And the next slide. And for details about this, actually, this is what's done. The semantic lexicon was locally trained at the Mayo Corpus, and the one of the projects Dr. Xu led before is the Sharp-N project. Next. And in this way, just to illustrate how community open science help us to move NLP forward. We know for PASCs, there are multiple different groups that already look at the PASC science symptoms in the clinical notes. How do we capture them? And we can leverage what they deliver for our effort. And this is the PASC resource currently in the PASC 2.0, in the N3C NLP 2.0 is including from those two sources. One is from N3C, the long COVID effort led by Dr. Robson, and the second one is by Niju from Harvard, where they mine from their local corpus about 355 high-level long COVID symptoms. And we incorporate those resources into our PASC NLP engine. Next. Very short summary. The piece what we did in this 2.0 is that we map our semantic lexicon to the latest OMAP vocabulary. And if there's a standard vocabulary there, we map to the standard vocabulary concept identify. If there's not, we use whatever available there in the OMAP vocabulary. And all terms from the those articles were processed and mapped to the concept that are different from the latest OMAP vocabulary. And for terms couldn't be mapped, we also review and map them to either the closest OMAP concept identifier or map to HPO identifiers. Next. Evaluation. So the best system is just to come out of box, and we actually try to illustrate how we can iteratively evaluate, how do we evaluate and refine at the local sites. So in this example, so we got that system, those resource build, and we actually refine this through our local, we have 97 non-hollow nodes we trained, and we use 30 nodes to do the kind of testing. And through that process, we notice majority of the concepts through the for PASC are covered by the dictionary, but we do have 23 are not covered in the initial PASC dictionary. So we're talking about 23 out of 1,500 type of concepts. We add 4 concepts not mappable to OMAP or HPO vocabulary. And the comparison with a human annotator on the PASC symptoms section of a long hauler sections of 30 nodes. And this is what we found is basically the NLP engine actually do better than human in this case. So it's look like you add a human annotator as a part of your process to extract PASC sign symptoms. And we just say, if you deploy this system, it's better than a single human there to extract such information. Next. And so we want you to join the journey for this. Let's go to the next slide. Emily, so this is some detail about for those who are part of the N3C Recover effort. Where you kind of required to test, deploy our infrastructure and run the NLP engine. There are resource commitment. This is varied due to various levels of maturity at different institutions. As Sunyang has been showing at the beginning, when sites say we want to participate in NLP, but at the end, you notice there are so many things was missing. We're not truly ready, but we hope through our minimum viable products, the backbone or ETL process, we can help your sites getting that maturity ready for data submission. And we are working on getting a kickoff meeting for the Recover NLP team. We hope the site lead on the N3C data submission side and analysis who will do the work will come to this kickoff meeting. Then we also plan to have 30 minutes biweekly implementation stand-up starting the first week of February for 4 months to get all the sites boosting to get the pipeline implemented. Next slide. This is a computing resource required. During the deployment, testing, and onboarding some sites, we noticed there even the JDK, the Java version running can be different version. And so we are currently ask the sites to have JDK 9 available, and JDK 11 is optimal. And the whole backbone, whole minimum viable product itself was designed to scale for cloud parallel and big data computing. But if you are, we also package a standalone environment, which is with embedded Flink cluster configure. And this is some basic statistics we provided. For reference, we are using at the Mayo site, so we use 64 calls per job on Spark for our NLP process. I think Andrew can chip in for the to running across our 300 million documents, how long it takes to run. Currently, we are within a week, we should be able to run all the NLP on all our nodes, 300 million nodes. But this is, we take advantage of the Spark and also it's a cluster there. And we also have, if your local sites, you have the other requirement is reasonable computational accessible data warehouse access. We notice many people download our system and try to run on their local file system. We are strongly discouraged that due to the privacy concern of the PHI data in the clinical nodes. We do want the sites to talk to their IT team to ensure there's a secure firewall behind to run this engine, and involve them is important. We don't like people to run NLP on a local PC, which is may not be secured, may not have the necessary security protection. Next. So some more detail. The implementation of minimal viable product is behind firewall. This is strongly encouraged for the human centricity component of the pipeline. And the N3C NLP submissions are in only 2 submissions, which are in the format of OMAP, Odyssey node, and the node NLP table, which is extracted as a CSV file. And just to keep emphasize, all the text fields in the node NLP table are redacted. They're not a part of the submission. And the scripts, which Amy will talk a little bit later, which is show how the whole process will running. Only the OMAP concept identifier together with documented information are the one which you are going to submit. The document metadata information submitted include the patient identifiers. This means patient IDs, because you need to link to the structured submission N3C data. And we also want the data information about that document also available, so we can link back to the necessary encounters. And we have been developed this testing this minimum viable product through partnership with multiple institutions, and as well as working with the, all the common data models, including, so Mayo is an ACTI2B2, then Tufts is in OMAP, and UNC is in PICONET. So we kind of figure out those can be linked back to the structured data. Next. So Emily, do you want to chip in for this one?
Sure, thanks so much. So this is a very practical slide to literally explain how, if you are a submitting site that already submits a payload to N3C, how you would incorporate a new NLP part of your payload. And we spent a lot of time thinking about the logistics of this, because we know that most sites, including my own, don't include the note data in the same database or even in the same network as our CDM. And so we understand that sites that are participating in this NLP enhancement to the N3C data are maybe going to need to have an entirely new ETL to move over data that is generated by this NLP process into the same area of your network infrastructure that powers your N3C submission. So we've put together this flow chart, and the link to this flow chart, as well as detailed explanations of each of these steps, is here on the slide. So I encourage you to look that up. But the flow chart will sort of walk you through all of the steps that we think are necessary in order to participate in this data enhancement. I will say one thing that is not illustrated here, but is in the details in the wiki, is that no matter what data model you have, whether it's OMOP, PCORNet, Trinetics, or, well, I'm going to exclude Trinetics because they sort of have their own way of doing it, but whether it's OMOP, PCORNet, or ACT, is that we are still asking you to build the OMOP note tables in the same database as your CDM. And that's because most of the data models, except for OMOP, don't have a note-derived data specific table, and that's fine, but we're sort of bending the rules a little bit to not mess up your existing CDM, but add these tables just in the same area so that our extract scripts can grab them the way that it grabs the rest of your data. Why does it have to live in the same area as the rest of your N3C data? I suppose it doesn't by letter of the law, but one thing that's extremely important is that the patient IDs that are used in your Note NLP table are going to be the same patient IDs that you send to N3C. So again, we developed this flowchart considering that that step would probably be necessary in order to get the patient IDs to match up. Your mileage may vary, and we are open to discussing with you different ways of setting this up. And so please feel free to reach out to us on Slack in order to ask questions about, hey, can I do it this way or this way? We want to be able to support you through this process. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Next slide. So we have a list of teams. So for the infrastructure, for sites who are willing to deploy the infrastructure, you can reach out to Kathleen Cody from Mayo team. And we also want to, for sites who want to contribute to the NLP release. Remember that we just demonstrated the PASC. How do we package that as a part of the release? For your site, local sites, if you have any kind of NLP algorithms you want to package it together to disseminate it globally to all the other sites, we welcome you to contributing. We can package this as together with our pipeline. This is, remember, the whole pipeline itself is the minimum viable product, the backbone. It is the it's an ETL process. It can be configured to have other NLP system as well as other NLP algorithms we package it together to be released to the community to adopt. And for domain team with NLP needs, and you can reach out to Rafael from the who has been wonderful to coordinating, provide the support for the N3C NLP team. Any other question, you can reach out to me. Next. So there are many planned development, and I don't know if the Trinex folks are on the call. We are actually working on package the NLP engine as a part of the Trinex. In that way, you are not using the minimal viable product of the backbone, but using the NLP engine, and the Trinex actively working on get the code to be reviewed, get approval to be part of the appliance, which is for sites who are using Trinex for data submission. There's a possibility to talk to the Trinex folks and get this NLP data processed and submit to the N3C. We're also working on NLP knowledge authoring and concept mapping service. This is actually ongoing type of development. And we are looking forward to collaboration in this space. Actually, this is based on the CTS2 specification, which Dr. Xu led back then. Lastly, we are incorporating those. There are many open source NLP algorithms developed. We are incorporating those as a part of the release. Next. So basically, this is an ongoing community collaboration. I hope after this presentation, people not ask me, say, can you get my NLP deployed, but rather, can we get the text analytics infrastructure deployed so we can develop an NLP to facilitating data augmentation. We want the whole community to have such a capability and to have the data augmented with NLP so that we can have more scientific rigor research done when we use the EHR data. Next. So this is the join the journey to this journey to translate technology innovation to empower clinical research towards better health for everyone. I keep emphasizing it's everyone, and also this is a human-centric and the AI human-centric AI ethical framework. This is the whole toolkit, and we have about 10 minutes for questions.
Thank you very much, Hongfang. That was an outstanding overview of not only the importance of NLP, but some of the obvious pitfalls and challenges that confront NLP investigators. It's the critical nature of it for clinical research, and of course, its application to N3C and Recover and related initiatives associated with our audience. And thank you also for describing the process of engaging and incorporating NLP. We had one, I see a question has come up, another one. Thanks for the extraordinary presentations. One quick comment, some of the NLP programs in the PASC arena may help to crystallize a more detailed case definition of PASC, including various related words and phrases describing specific symptoms that may be regarded as interchangeable synonyms from a semantic standpoint. I gather you agree with that, Hongfang?
Yes, yes. And I think the detailed case definition of a PASC, this is related to, how do I say, when we talk about the PASC signs symptoms, those are connection of signs symptoms the patient have. Many of those signs symptoms we notice they are actually from the neurological disorder area, the associated signs symptoms. So I'm actually working on getting those to be part of the process, to be part of the PASC, because we don't know what things, new things will come up. So this is the evolving field. So the symptoms, all those synonyms, all those things, they're captured. So that's the reason why we want more sites to participate, so the variations and word phrases can be captured more extensively. Hi.
Thank you. I see a hand from Andrew Williams.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to give what our experience was like as one of the participants in testing out the wonderful framework that Hongfang's just described. So it was indeed easy to deploy, was highly performant once we did deploy it. And in comparing, for example, the number of concepts for clinical conditions that we could get from structured sources versus the non-redundant ones that we got from unstructured sources on PASC, it was an enormous gain. So you got a lot for something where much of the work, which is potentially complex, is done for you. And there was an excellent collegial relationship and support for the whole process. So it's just wanted to let people know from the point of view of somebody who tried to adopt and deploy this, what it was like.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think the Andrew's team has tremendous help us to get that minimal viable product to the stage we are comfortable to say at the next Pfaff has the fully deployment of the infrastructure. And I would also comment it's not just for N3C COVID. And I believe, Andrew, you have planned to use that infrastructure for supporting other projects using NLP.
Exactly. It's a great asset, not just for these specific projects, but it enables your institution to, at a very low cost, learn to use something that can be deployed for a whole variety of use cases, and as was just laid out for us, participate in community-wide efforts where other people are sharing things and will be increasingly easy to adopt and gain value in lots of different content areas. Very, very true.
So I want to emphasize that really with the tooling and support that N3C Recover and Hongfang's group are offering, one really can establish a production NLP environment. obviously for the purposes that we're requesting that you consider for N3C and Recover. But as Andrew just attested, it then becomes an available infrastructure that is usable for a variety of applications. And, you know, and the price is right, I think.
Yeah. I want to for those who don't know, actually the whole infrastructure coming from ONC Sharp-N project, which Chris was the PI back then, and we were finished that project in 2012, and we want to see this to be deployed. So we do deploy those things at the Mayo Clinic, and all the minimum viable products here is something we actually tested to have this in production at the Mayo Clinic. And we are enabling about 400 different NLP projects across the Mayo Clinic enterprise, not just research, but also practice and quality improvement. So basically that's it takes long time to do, but it's really rewarding to see the infrastructure, the text data be used. And it's a very rewarding experience. Thank you, Dr. Xu, for giving that opportunity.
Well, thank you for making it real. Other questions? We have some time, but if not, let me thank again the Mayo team and everybody else that has supported this effort, including all the pilot test sites that were very important. And I do encourage you to contact Hongfang's team with the connections that were shown, because this is a resource that I think your organization will find very helpful. With that, you'll have your regular host back next week. That will be the good Dr. Saltz. And meanwhile, thank you and have a good week.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for one wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Bye.
Bye.